Before I begin, I would like to say how good it is to be here today and to thank you for asking me. It's been some years since I retired from full-time ministry, and even though retirement is wonderful, as some of you know, there are times when you miss the buzz of it all, especially in a season like Advent. And even though it was always a really busy time, or it's always a really busy time with ministers, because it seems like, church and home and family life and neighborhood events and things like that are all coming together at the same time. But there's an excitement to it. I think it's similar to the way that children feel. Like the little girl today said she could hardly wait for Christmas Eve, to hang the stockings and Santa would be coming. I think sometimes as a minister I could hardly wait till Christmas Eve and that candlelight service, and we always had communion and telling that birth story once again, and just the wonder of it all. So you miss that in retirement. So thanks again for the opportunity to talk today about one of the most central characters in the story of Jesus' birth, and that is his mother, Mary. Let us pray. Oh God, as we take some time to consider Mary's response to your request, that she be the birth mother of the one who would come to change the world, the Messiah. May her hope-filled response inspire us to be a source of hope to those whose lives are filled with desperation and despair. Amen. Well, at Trinity United Church in Beamsville, I share leadership in a group of women. We've been going 5 years now, and we call ourselves Soul Sisters. And there are about 15 of us. And every year at this time, we have a Christmas dinner together. We hire a caterer so we can all enjoy it. And after dinner, while we're sitting around the table, we retell the story of Jesus' birth in a modern context. And you may have told stories something like this before, perhaps even around a campfire, where someone in the circle starts the story and then speaks for a few sentences, gives a few sentences, and then suddenly stops, and the person to the left of her or him has to continue on. You know what I mean? And then it goes on and on and on and on around the circle. We actually went around the circle twice. And, sometimes it can get kind of crazy and silly, but it's amazing. It can also be quite poignant at times and quite enlightening. You just never really know where the story will go. But as they're telling it, in their mind, they have the story, the ancient story of Jesus' birth. So the other night, we began the story with a naive teenage girl named Mary, who had just had an ultrasound, which had confirmed that she is pregnant, and she can't understand how that possibly can be. But the next 4 women who carried on the story, going this way, when I'm thinking about them in my head, the next 4 women kept focusing on the possibility or this idea that she was a virgin. And for a few minutes, it seemed like we were going to be stuck on that that's what the story was going to be about. But finally, the 6th person on the table was able to find a way to move it on. And so we continued to tell the story to the end right through to its end. But in the much larger context of the whole Christian church around the world, when we think about Mary, do we immediately focus on the fact that this was a virgin, that she was a virgin, it was a virgin birth? Do we spend too much time, regurgitating that issue over and over again? And I think for some people, like once they hear that, but they'll just immediately think, well, it's not a believable story. It's a joke. Or for other people, Mary becomes some very supernatural, some figure, some sort of ethereal body, not a real person. But it's interesting, as we follow the biblical story that Bonnie just read, and if we follow it carefully, we see a real person, a real young woman. And as we follow her life, we see she accomplished so much, and so much more than just a virgin birth. So, you know this story, but it's always a good story to retell again, isn't it? Mary is visited by the angel Gabriel in the middle of the night. And as a little aside, if you've ever done a bit of reading on angels, there is a hierarchy, and some of them deliver more important messages than others. And at the top of the pile is the angel Gabriel. And I guess he's the archangel Gabriel. So he was the one chosen to bring, for this message that went right to the top. And the message that Gabriel brings to Mary is that a new day is on the horizon, and someone will be coming into the world who's going to bring about the much needed changes for the people of the day. These were desperate times. And with Mary's consent, she will be the one to birth this person who is coming. So then Mary naturally asks a key question, well, how can this be since I'm a virgin? And the angel goes on to explain how it will happen. And along with that, he tells her that her cousin Elizabeth, who's a much older cousin, as they say in the scripture, long past the childbearing years, she's also become pregnant and is going to give birth to a child soon. And the angel agrees. He agrees. It does sound impossible. But when God is involved, nothing is impossible. So Mary ponders this for some time, but in the end, she agrees. And the first thing she does after this consent is she goes off to visit her cousin Elizabeth to check it out and see, is this really happening? And upon arriving at Elizabeth's home, she finds Elizabeth is 6 months pregnant. So something's going on, something of God. And she and Elizabeth, but particularly Mary, are part of this magnificent plan that's going on. And Mary, is carrying now in her tummy the one who will, rule the world with justice. This is really something. And she just can't stop singing and jumping about. She's just suddenly overwhelmed with a joy unlike anything she's ever experienced before. And this joy, it's not because she's now going to be the mother of Jesus and, that is going to happen. She will be blessed for years. But the joy that is really, or what is really at the foot of her joy is the fact that this person is now going to be coming into the world. And this person who is the long-promised Savior, the one the birth prophets, or the one the prophets foretold for hundreds of years before, the one who would bring about the great reversals of fortune needed so desperately in her day, the one who will level the playing field, make it fairer for everyone, the one who will bring justice for all, the one who will fulfill the promises made by their ancestor Abraham thousands of years before. This is the one she now is holding in her body. And the thought of that brings her just immeasurable joy. And so she sings this beautiful song that has now been, that we now sing in churches and read the words year after year, the Magnificat. But you still can't help but wonder, I mean, how Mary could believe that an angel coming to her in a dream, in the night, with a bizarre request. Like, how could she believe that was really real? I mean, it was a dream, but she believed that it was real. And what would draw a young woman in Galilee to sing such words as, "My soul glorifies the Lord," or "Surely from now on generations will call me blessed," or "He has scattered the proud in the thoughts of their hearts. He's brought down the powerful and lifted up the lowly. He's filled the hungry with good things." This is not the language of a young teenager or a typical teenager. But Mary was wise for her years. Maybe that's why she was chosen. She was very self-aware. I mean, she alone knew whether or not she was a virgin. And she asked the question then, well, wait, why me of all the women in the world? Although her worldview would have been very limited, probably the world for Mary was her community and a couple of communities beyond. And the images that she raised of all those great reversals that were coming about, they mirrored so many of Isaiah's words and prophecies. Phrases like, "The ears of the deaf will be opened, and the lame will be leaping like a deer, and waters breaking forth in the desert, and deserts blooming with flowers." I mean, and even though Isaiah had penned those words 700 years before, his prophecies were widely known. And I think that Mary must have been the child of a good Hebrew family, and she knew the scriptures, and she took them seriously. I guess over the years of my ministry, I've met so many people, some of you, who have immersed themselves in some sort of social justice or outreach work. And whenever I ask them, well, like, how did you get involved in this? Or why you stayed in this so long? And often the answer is just something quite whimsical. Well, I was reading a book, and it was a story about a refugee woman. And she was kind of isolated because she didn't have the language skills of the country she had come to. And then I started thinking, maybe I could help with that. I could be a language coach. I could coach her. And then, so I did. I just started trying, and now I coach all of these different people, and, or maybe this. Well, I was walking into the bay one night before Christmas, and there was a homeless guy lying, in the foyer on the floor. And I was just suddenly filled with this thought, like I was so grateful that I never had to live like that, or anyone in my family. And I just felt like such gratitude. I could feel God kind of calling me to do something, to get involved in this issue of homelessness. And then I found my way to Out of the Cold, and I've been doing it ever since. And you sort of wonder, well, is their call to God that much different than the one that Mary felt? Is it just as real? A couple of weeks ago, we had a very interesting speaker come to our church, Trinity. And her name is Dr. Jean Clinton. And she's a medical doctor, a neuroscientist, a professor at McMaster University. No lack of credentials there. And her current focus is the resilience of the human brain. And her presentation to us was titled Building Resilience in Today's Children and Adolescents. And she began by lamenting how parents today, or even teachers, community people, we try so hard to protect our children from any negative influences, and we just don't want them to have to face any harmful situations or awkward situations. But she said in doing so, we're denying them opportunities to problem solve and learn. She then moved on to talk about the human brain and its capacity to make connections, establish new connections whenever it is challenged, and particularly if it's with a negative or difficult situation. And with each new learning, it grows and gets better and better and better at adapting to difficult situations each time it's challenged. And she even went on and said, and this continues all of life, which was very comforting to us in the audience who were older. There's still hope for us. She went on to say that there's nothing genetic about this ability of a brain to adapt and be resilient. There's no resilience gene out there that some people have, or you have and you don't, so you're more resilient. This resilience builds with life experiences and opting for them. She then went on to say, and scientists never usually say anything like that, but she said that people who are part of a faith community, and you may be interested in this, people who are part of a faith community, like a church, or maybe a community organization, or some kind of club, develop resiliency better than those who aren't. In difficult situations, they don't back off or retreat into seclusion. They know where to go for advice or support so they can work through their situation. And as they do this, the resiliency of their brain increases. Now, I didn't take any notes. I'm just kind of from her. This is just my memory, so she probably shuddered if she heard. But I thought it was very interesting. It's over the course of our lives, from time to time, we do or will experience deep sadness, unfairness, shocking situations we never expected to encounter. The loss of a child or a spouse or a partner or a job. A life-altering disease or accident that we'll wonder, will I ever survive this? Will I ever get over this loss or this handicap? Some situations are so horrendous you really can't ever get over them. But knowing that there are people praying for you, knowing who to go to in a situation, knowing there is a group you can return to and people in it with the capacity to give you a hand, or teach you a skill, or give you some financial advice, or include you in a little outing or something. And then slowly, one step at a time, you begin to move on, to become a little more self-sufficient. I think if Dr. Clinton was here now, I think she would say something like, your brain is developing further, making more connections, becoming more resilient, and better able to address another upset should it happen. So you may be wondering, what does all this have to do with Mary and the question I raised earlier? What drew a young Galilean girl to embrace what the angels set before her, especially in an era where women were often stoned to death for improper behavior? Well, as I said before, Mary was a real person. She was very self-aware. She was essentially a thoughtful girl. She often pondered things in her heart. She was raised in a Hebrew community and was grounded in the scriptures. She knew who to go to for confirmation and support when she was uncertain, like her older cousin Elizabeth and Elizabeth's husband, Zachariah the priest. And with each challenge she addressed, she became more and more resilient, which enabled her to make that long trip from Nazareth to Bethlehem in her 3rd trimester of her pregnancy, to deliver her child in a stable, to trust her dreams, to make the decision to escape to Egypt along with her husband Joseph and baby Jesus, to let her child Jesus follow his dreams and the life he believed God was calling him to travel with her friends and watch over him and pray for him, often from a distance, to witness him being brutally crucified, and then to have to deal with the loss of a child, to hold him forever in her heart. With each challenge along the way, she grew stronger and more resilient. She accomplished so much more in her life than having a virgin birth. There is so much we can learn from Mary, and it is good to celebrate her life today. Amen.